You are listening to the Cookbook Love podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 329.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. Welcome to the week after Christmas. Today's December 26th. I'm excited to be here. I hope you are all doing well. I have a very nice interview with an expert in German baking for you today. But before we get started, I do want to let you know that next Thursday on January the 2nd, 2025, I am hosting my first live workshop of the year. The workshop's called The State of Cookbook Publishing, and I am going to provide you a comprehensive overview of trends, opportunities, and challenges in the cookbook publishing industry for the year ahead. So whether you want to self-publish, traditionally publish, you want to learn about emerging technologies or design trends, consumer demands, this is the workshop for you. My goal, as always, is to help aspiring cookbook authors, people who are recipe creators and collectors, food entrepreneurs, or registered dietitians, food and nutrition experts learn more about the cookbook publishing landscape. So I'm going to provide information to help you make informed decisions about your cookbook projects, whether you're publishing for profit, whether you're publishing for a legacy for your family, or whether you are publishing because you have a passion in the kitchen. So I think it's important to know that publishing has shifted. AI has probably been one of the greatest influences in publishing and in writing. So I'm going to help you understand what's working in 2025, popular niches, effective platforms, some new tools, and give you a competitive edge in publishing your cookbook successfully, connecting with readers, and helping you to achieve your goals through helping your reader achieve their goals. So to register for this, which again is on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025 at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Time, and you can register by going to cookbookwritersacademy.com/2025. And I did put a link for that in the show notes. So again, welcome everybody. Hope you're all doing well. And today I have a fun episode still about baking. I'm delighted to welcome Heidrun Metzler. Heidrun was born and raised in Germany and grew up surrounded by a family of women who loved to bake, learning from her mother, her aunt, and her grandmother. After moving to the U.S. as a young woman, Heidrun began creating her own baking recipes, blending her German roots with American influences. In her new cookbook, German Heritage Baking, Heidrun spends over a decade, which she calls a labor of love, to preserve and share her family and her country's baking traditions. This book highlights inherited tips, techniques, and ingredient knowledge alongside the profound joy that Heidrun has of creating fresh baked goods at home. Today on the podcast, we talk all about her inspiration for baking, her tips for baking success, and we take a deep dive into the chapters in this book all about German short crust pastry, German cookies, and German sponge-based torts. So without further delay, let's dive into this interview with Heidrun Metzler. Hello, Heidrun. Welcome to the Cookbook Love podcast.
Hi, Maggie. I'm so glad I'm on your podcast.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here. Have your beautiful book here in my hands, looking at it right now. But before we dive into talking about your book, German Heritage Baking, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I was born in Germany, and I left Germany around the age of 23 and came to the United States and realized that the baking wasn't like it was in Germany, and it was really hard to find a good bakery that reminded me of things I was used to. I had come over with, before I left, I jotted down on one of my mother's, the little book that hangs on the wall where you put your grocery list on. So I took a piece of paper of that and just wrote down 5 of my favorite cakes, just the ingredients, because I knew how to make them. And then I made them over and over again till I went home, and I said, I got to get more recipes, And I went to my mother and my aunt and my grandma and just collected, oh, I made this one. Look at this one. This is great. And then they generally would say, well, what do you want me to bake for you? And so I would get my favorite meals and my favorite cakes. It was so nice. And then later on, I went visiting with my kids, and they got to experience Germany and all the food and everything. And then my son, my second son, who is now a grown up and lives in Reno, he said to me, Mom, you got to finish this cookbook because this baking book, because I can't find anything so good that you made anywhere. And so I was going back. I had been doing the baking book for ever since I got there, really, and collected the recipes and wrote them down, put notes, where I made changes, um, came up with new ones, and just kept them. And but I had trouble getting the directions down so they were precise. People could follow them easily, but I wasn't losing the detail. It was really important to me to have the detail, because often I find in books now you put the filling together. Well, how?
Yeah.
And so I started pitching to a couple of editors, and it came back, and it wasn't what I needed. And I finally found an editor in South Carolina, and she and I have been working together for the last 7 years. And it turned out that her grandmother was German, and she had experienced some of the recipes. And then she ended up baking the recipes herself too. And so we have a great relationship, and I'm so thankful I found her. Of course, then there was a lot of testing. You had to do over and over, and we had about 10 testers, and everybody, I told them, pick what you want, and I will give you a book when it's done. So they were all excited, and then the ones that didn't get tested, I tested over and over again. And my rule is kind of, if I change something, I bake it 3 times, and if it comes out each time, then it can go in a book.
Yeah.
But if you bake it one time, it could be luck, and so then people run into issues, and so that's how I kind of work it.
Yeah. So what is it about German baking, and what's the traditions that you had growing up with your mother and your aunt and your grandmother that you wanted to recreate with your recipes and with this book?
Well, I loved eating it. and and also it seemed like they were always so happy when they baked, and it was always, look what I made, and come up for coffee. And so it was a really fun time in the kitchen, and especially in the wintertime. The kitchen is really warm, and we're baking, and I'm helping with the fruit, taking the seeds out or picking it. Well, in the winter, I wouldn't be picking it, but in the summer, I would go out and climb up the plum tree and get the plums. And there's another little fruit called Mirabelle, which is a cousin of the plum. I can't get it here, but it's also makes a good cake. We had raspberry bushes and black and red currant bushes. We had pick your own strawberry field, like walking distance, in the summertime, the blueberries were ripe in the woods, and then these really good small ones, like the Maine blueberries.
Mhm.
So we'd go out and pick those and talk about what shall we make? My aunt always loved to take quark, which is a German fresh cheese, and she always loved to make quark and whip up some whipped cream and then pull it under and then pull under the fresh blueberries,
Oh, yeah.
So we did that, and we made different cakes with it too, and sometimes even put them in the cheesecake. And so it's, whatever you want to do, you can kind of dream it up.
Yeah. And I think that baking was a big part of your life then. It wasn't just like you all cooked a lot and ate meals together. I mean, it sounds to me like baking was kind of front and center to your day-to-day life.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And it was just really fun, I think, and just watching my mom, how she would arrange the fruit on top of a pie. She would just kind of zone in and be in her happy
Yes.
space, in her creative space. And
Yes.
it just was always positive all around.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course you get
Yeah.
to eat it, sit down and talk, have a cup of coffee, and um amazing that you wanted people then to be able to have a book where they could create these traditional recipes and techniques, and you even mentioned some culinary secrets, things that you've learned along the way so that we can recreate these German desserts and baking in our own home, which is wonderful. So the book just came out. It's brand new. I just got it within the past week. I've enjoyed reading through it. And the first thing I want to mention is it's not just a home thing in Germany either. You can go to a bakery and use these pictures of these beautiful cakes and torts at the bakery. I'm sure in the US you didn't find that like on every street corner by any stretch.
No, I didn't. I did hear though that there are some German bakeries on the East Coast, Upper East Coast, like New York area, and then some in California.
Yeah.
Um, there's one German bakery I went in when I lived in Texas. I drove out to Fredericksburg, which
Yeah.
is a German settlement. Um, and that cafe, they didn't have a lot of elaborate things, but they had the yeast kind of, what you like, the danishes,
Right.
and then a few of the more tort and cake things. But if you didn't stand in line at 7:30 in the morning,
Oh,
it was just, you could get the leftovers, and then by 11 they were sold out.
yeah. Yeah.
You can only bake so much as a one person bakery. You got to get up at 3 in the morning, and you have to get it all ready. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So that I can see why they probably would sell out. I'm in northern Kentucky, right outside of Cincinnati, and there was a large German population that settled in Cincinnati. And back, not currently, but there, well, I don't know if that's true. There's a couple of bakeries. One's called Servati and the other is called Buskin. And I believe that historically the cakes and the torts were always a large part of what they do. Like we can still get stolen there, like that they make for the Christmas holiday, which is
Oh,
actually
good.
nice to be able to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And cookies, some of the cookies that we're going to talk about today, also available for the holidays. So I guess we'd need to look for cities, like you said, where there was a large German population of people that settled, and then they would open their bakeries. And because people miss this, this reminded you of home.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I felt it was important, just the questions that I would get from my friends. Um, how did you make it? How do you make your crust? I can't make a good crust. Um, people ask me, what did I do wrong? And I explain it to them. And I felt like, there's no pass me down through the generations
yeah,
in America. And part of it is because the kids leave,
yeah,
they go to colleges at 18, and then they settle somewhere else. So the families aren't together so much as in
Right.
Germany.
Right.
And so I really felt like I wanted to bring the knowledge back in
Yeah.
so people can pass it on to their kids. And I put in all my favorite recipes. So
Good. Yeah. Well, I think that
yeah.
that's,
And
sometimes people are like, well, what kind of recipes would you put in? You're like, well, of course I would put my favorites in because those are the things that you enjoy baking, you've enjoyed sharing, and you want to teach people about.
yeah,
So your book
exactly.
has 3 chapters. The first chapter, you'll have to pronounce the name, but it's a desserts based on a short crust. Second is
Mhm.
cookies, and then the third is a sponge-based tort chapter. So let's talk about the first chapter and tell us a little bit about short crust and its role in German baking.
Okay, so Mürbeteig, that's what it's called. Mürbeteig is basically a word that defines uh, brittle, soft, delicate, those kinds of words. When you think it's kind of not sure if it's the right explanation, but if you ever have worked with mortar, when you put, things together, your bricks together,
Or
you know how
tile,
this
maybe if
is.
anybody's done tile work, like,
Yeah,
yeah.
the grout,
Yes, yes.
how that
It's kinda
is
like
kind of.
a thick paste, but it's not sticky. It's,
Yeah,
I can imagine the might be
it's
sugar.
Mürbe.
Or
It's
yeah,
Mürbe.
yeah, yeah. That's what it is, right. Yeah,
So I don't know what word that would be. I actually looked around the dictionary. I couldn't find a comparable word for it. But anyway, basically our short crust has an egg in it and lots of butter, of course.
yeah,
And so you just knead it up by hand, and you can either roll it, or I prefer to just push it. I slice it, I make a ball, and it goes in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And it's important to have cold ingredients when you do that. Your hands will make it warm
yeah,
already, and if you over knead it, put it back in the fridge. Don't only add as much flour as you actually need. Don't over add flour. And then after 30 minutes of cooling, I slice it in 3 discs and put it in my pan, and then I just push it in place with my hand and draw up the sides, depending on what kind of, am I making a flatter pie or am I making a cheesecake with a big crust?
mhm.
So I just pull it up, then you do put your filling in, and it makes a really nice base. It has a little baking powder in it, so it gets even a little bit more fluffy. So it makes a very good crust that you can make a lot of things with.
Yeah, there was
So
quite a few recipes, using just the short crust. Like you said, everything from cheesecake with a short crust to strawberry rhubarb pie, apple pie, and then also at the
with
very
crumbs.
yes, with the crumb topping, and then, you did some lattice, pies, and then, Linzer I believe, was in here also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Linzer tort is basically the same thing, but
yeah,
you do it with nuts.
yeah, yeah,
With quite a large percentage of nuts.
yeah. So when people made these types of desserts, when were these served?
Um, well, usually it's very customary for everyone to make a cake on Sundays. But because people visit each other, and or you call somebody and say, "Come over for coffee," and so Sundays you always have to have a cake. And then during the week, sometimes you'll just feel like, okay, I want a cake, and it's usually 4 o'clock coffee. And so either you make your own cake or you go to the cafe, down the street and pick up a couple of slices. And but I always liked it better when my mom baked it.
Yes, yes,
um, but yeah, it just is really, I think it's an easy cake to start with. Um, and you get a lot of filling that when you eat it, you don't have so much dough.
right, right.
So
And I also think that dinner time might have been a little bit later, maybe in the evening. So this is a nice little way to sit down, have a cup of coffee, piece of cake, enjoy the afternoon before you actually have supper or dinner.
Yeah, we usually have our big meal at noon or 1, and then in the evening we just have like a little snack.
Yeah.
We might have some soup, or we have our, our breads are really delicious. So we put out breads with cold cuts and cheeses, and then you kind of make your own slice of bread with whatever you want to eat. And so it's a very light
Yes.
dinner. And yeah, if you eat 2 cakes at 4 o'clock, you probably want to skip dinner.
Yeah.
Which I did a bunch.
Enjoying the cakes that your mother and your aunt and your grandmother would make.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about chapter 2? That's all about cookies.
Yeah, chapter 2 is about cookies, and a lot of them are cookies that we make for Christmas, like the vanilla Gipfel, the Spekulatius, which are also called Springerle. Those are kind of fun. I got in one of the online stores, I found this little rolling pin, and you actually don't buy the big one, buy the smaller one, and it has the imprint of the little figurines on it. So you roll out your dough and you pull you pull it over the dough, and it imprints the cookies, and then you just slice them and put them on your cookie sheet and bake them. And they you can buy Spekulatius spice online. We have it. So I would recommend to do a German brand, because the spices are different. They're not exactly like gingerbread. They're more like there's actually a little pepper in it. And it's a different taste than the gingerbread. So anyway, that one is fun. And then I found I think he may be German from the name, but he's on eBay, and he carves the individual, like the bigger ones, and you just spread it in there, the dough, and then you turn it upside down and it comes out. And I enjoyed those. You can get the Nicholas one, and the typical one with a windmill.
Yeah.
Because the Dutch make those too, and there's the Dutch windmill on there. Those are fun.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
looked up the spice mix. It has fennel, allspice, anise, cinnamon, clove, coriander, cardamom. This one also has lemon zest, nutmeg, and orange zest. So quite a few
good.
spices. And like you mentioned, they're not all traditional baking spices. There are a lot that would be associated with more savory food. And so that's
Yeah.
nice to know that by the mix. And that's the spice flavor that's in this cookie. And as a matter of fact, in this one, there isn't even any ginger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very neat. Okay. And the where did cookies, what role do they play in German cuisine and eating? And when is it that cookies, you mentioned the holidays, any other
Yeah.
time? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you just feel, I always bake cookies whenever I feel like it. I bake whatever, but it is very customary to do the butter cookies, um, the vanilla Gipfel, and the Spekulatius. Yeah, it's very customary to do those around Christmas. Now, the ones that I've in there with the chocolate ends, the almond paste cookies covered with almonds. What are they called? Slices.
Right.
There are slivers in their slices, but these are slices. And then you dip the ends in chocolate. Now, those you can get everywhere year round, in anywhere. And I love those because I love marzipan.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
love the marzipan from Europe. I don't, that's the brand that I I get, and the Lübeck marzipan and the Nürnberger. So Lübeck is a town and Nuremberg is a town. So those two marzipans are the best, considered the best in Germany.
Mhm.
And I just found a German place over in Florida, and they had all what I call my essentials. I was so happy, and I ordered a bunch of marzipan, and I ordered some German flour.
Yeah. It's always amazing when you find a place like that, how exciting it is to think these are my ingredients, and
Exactly.
so fun to order them. The almond paste crescents do look really tasty. Both tips of the crescent dipped in chocolate with the slivered almonds across the top.
Yeah, and you bite in it, and it's soft, and
Yeah, looks
so good.
lovely. Looks lovely. So at the back of this chapter, there is a gingerbread house. Tell us about the gingerbread house.
Yeah, I know the gingerbread house. Oh boy, that was a production to get that recipe down. It has many steps. It's baked over several days. And I made a template that you can get from my webpage as a PDF, so you don't actually have to draw it out. And you print it out, and then somewhat like I think you have to put together one sheet with two sheets, and I have little places there how to do it. And I made a gingerbread house every year when the kids were little. And one year I made one for the school. And what I do is I make it first. You have to, cut out the pieces in the dough, and the dough needs to rest for a day because you're going to use these gingerbread. What are they called? What do you call them in America? So the ingredients.
Oh, the ingredient?
They are the potash and the Hirschhorn salts, which is, what is it called in America again? I think I wrote it in there.
It's called, in English, the potash is called potassium carbonate. And the other one, Hirschhorn salts.
Hirschhorn salts, that
In
means.
English, it's Hartshorn or ammonium hydrogen carbonate. Those are the leavenings that you use for gingerbread. And you can substitute baking powder if these are not available, is what you say.
Yeah. It's better. The baking powder will make it a little bit softer, a little bit harder to deal with when you put it together, but it still works.
Yeah.
The Hirschhorn salts, it's actually used to be derived from the inner horn of the deer. And of course, now they don't do that anymore, but that's how it started. And it's a leavening those leavenings need to rest to fully develop. So you leave that in the refrigerator overnight, and then the next day you roll it out, and you put your template on top, your different templates, you cut them out, you bake them, and then you let those cool. And then you can start putting the lower part of the house together. And then you have to wait again, and you make up egg white. You whip up a lot of egg white with powdered sugar and put it together. That's your cement. And then you basically, when the structure is solid, then you call the kids in and you let them decorate it. And it was just fun. I just let them go for it. I didn't give them directions or anything. And they came up with different designs, and,
it is fun. And I think you make an excellent point to do the construction of the house. It takes a couple of days to do that, and to let the frosting or the icing dry. And it is like cement once it dries, but the children will get impatient if you have them stand and watch all of that, and they think they can decorate it like immediately. It takes time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And you have a nice illustration or a picture here of when you do the base, using jars or cans to support it so that it
Yeah.
dries, and then putting the roof on and let that dry. And then, like you said, then you call the children in after you get all of that done. It is a lot of
Yeah.
fun. My grandfather was from Germany, and
Oh, yeah.
he always had a gingerbread house. Um, I don't know if he, at the time, if he could have it sent here, or if someone that he knew in the United States would bake a gingerbread house for us. But I can always remember, as his granddaughter, that was always something that he uh, contributed to our Christmas celebration, was this, a few times having this gingerbread house made.
Oh,
It's
nice.
very fun, and we, did it a couple times when our kids were little, and they do have a really good time. If you just have the candy and let them put it on themselves, it's a nice thing to do and to let them do, during the holidays.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing I wanna point out is, in your book, you do have, QR codes with links to videos. So, like, making the
Hmm.
short crust and making the gingerbread house, you do have videos that people can look at, and so those help a lot for people if they need to visualize your instructions on how to do these things.
Yeah, and more are coming as I'm baking more and getting more time now to bake again. I will film it and make videos and put more up.
Yep.
And if anybody has any like how do you do this? Could you make a video about that? They can always send me on my heidrunmetzler.com. There's a contact, and I get the emails, and then I can make a video.
Yeah, that's great, and that's a good way to get feedback and interaction with people, because sometimes it's kinda hard when you write a cookbook, like, you think you might have an idea about what people wanna know, but really hearing from your readers is invaluable, and they can, ask a lot of questions, and you can be sure to give, thorough videos and explanations. So that's great that you are open to those, questions from everybody. So the third chapter then is sponge-based cake torts. No, I said that wrong. Sponge cake-based torts. So tell us about a sponge cake and what it is about the sponge cake that makes these torts so delicious.
Well, sponge cakes, you don't use any butter. In sponge cakes, you whip the egg whites and you separate the eggs and you start with the egg yolks and the sugar. Then you whip your egg whites and you sift your flour, and then you take the the egg whites, put them on top of your egg yolk sugar mix, and then sift the flour on top, and then you take a whisk and you fold in everything together. You fold the flour into everything, the flour, the egg whites, and the egg yolks, everything together. And you have to do that carefully. Some people may not be familiar with the word fold, but it's really easy. It's basically a rotating motion. Um, and like if you think of making a circle with your hand as you have your whisk in your hand, you go down to the bottom, you bring it up, and you basically pull it through and fold everything. So then um as soon as it's all mixed together, you have to stop because you don't want to lose the air bubbles in your egg white. And then, some of them I add different flavors to, or vanilla. I love using real vanilla beans, and I slice them down the middle and then scrape out at least half of the vanilla pulp. It just the flavor, you can't beat that flavor. Um, compared to those little extracts. It permeates the whole cake when you do the vanilla pulp.
Yeah.
And then you let it dry, cool. Um, and then you basically cut it in half horizontally. So you have a bottom and a top. And then filling goes in between, and then you can decorate on top. And those are like the Black Forest cake or the cream mandarin cheesecake that I do in there. Um, there is
There's a
an
strawberry yogurt cream torte.
Oh
Looks
yeah,
really good.
that one is amazing.
Yep. And then
Yeah,
also
so
a hazelnut sponge. This one looks like it
yeah.
has is it orange? No, let's see. Cherry cream topping. No,
It's a mango. I think I
mango.
made,
Yep.
is it a mango? Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually I found there's some mango curds and lilikoi, which is passion fruit curds that you can buy, and they're from England, but you can
Uh-huh.
buy them online here. And they're very good. And that's a real easy solution to put on top if you don't want to make a glaze. And I think that's what I did with that one. And then the other version I did of that hazelnut cake is I draped it with a almond paste cover.
Yeah.
So it's two different ways of making them.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that the cake itself doesn't have any butter, oil, or dairy in it. The sponge doesn't, but the fillings would be cream or usually a cream-based filling, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
And
can do
fruit.
whatever you want,
Yeah.
really. I mean, if
Right.
somebody doesn't want dairy, they can probably come up with something they want to put in there.
Yeah. But like the Black Forest torte, the cream is a integral part of that. It's the
Yeah.
stacks of chocolate cake, the whipped cream, the cherries, and then the chocolate grating. And um, tell us a little bit about that cake. And I know it seems like something that, we associate with German baking, but it obviously was very popular. It's a very, see it a lot in German baking, and it must have had a big place in the bakeries. And was that a cake that people would make for the weekend or for every day or for special occasion?
Yeah, that would probably be a special occasion one. But you can get it in all the cafes year round. I think it originated in Bavaria. And the red cherries, have you seen their traditional costumes, the Bavarian costumes? So the Black Forest area of Bavaria has this, they have these hats, these kind of flat straw hats, and they have these red, what you have when you have one of those winter hats with a little round thing
Yes.
bouncing around in the
Yes.
back.
Yes.
So they have them in red all over their hat. So the black in the Black Forest is supposed to represent the Black Forest, the pine needles, and it's kind of dark in there. When you walk around in there, not much light gets in there.
Yeah.
That's why they call it Black Forest. And the red cherries are supposed to be the little puffy things they
The
have on their
pom-poms. I'm
hats.
looking it up here as we're
The
talking. They
pom
call them
poms, yeah.
bowling hat.
Yeah.
It is a straw hat, and then the pom-poms, they look like cherries on top of the hat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, the chocolate bark all around it is supposed to be the bark from the trees. And so, yeah, that was, and the main thing why it is Black Forest cake is because of the cherry brandy.
Uh-huh.
If you don't use cherry brandy in that cake, then it's not Black Forest cake. So the brandy is also from the Black Forest originally, so it has an integral part in this cake.
Huh.
And so anyway, I found somebody in Oregon, a distillery in Oregon that makes the cherry and the pear brandy and the cherry brandy, just like I can find it in Germany, because I tried many, many different brands, and that is definitely the best. And I don't know if I probably shouldn't say the brand here on the radio,
That's
I
okay.
guess.
That's okay. If you want to mention the brand,
Yeah.
the one that you think is the best, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well, it's called Clear Creek Distillery. And I got permission from them to put their name in my book, and I mentioned because I
Yeah, you mentioned it
honestly,
here. The Clear Creek Distillery in Hood River, Oregon makes Kirschwasser as tasty as German brands. Yeah, no, I think
yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
yeah. And Caitlin was so excited. She ordered a book right away. She's like, I'm ready to make these things.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great. I
I
think it's
gotta
always nice. I'm sure, like I said, when you can find something that mimics what you're used to using, I can see why you would get very excited about that.
yeah.
Yeah, very good. So, I see on the front of this book you say volume 1. Does that mean there's going to be a volume 2?
Yeah, so we started actually, it was one book. And then what happened is somebody pointed out, your book is going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's going to cost a lot to manufacture, it's going to cost a lot to ship. You should split it up. And they said in 3, but I was like, no, it's a good idea probably, because then I went and looked at books I had with the same page count, and I'm like, oh my God, that person is right. That would be a huge book. And so we split it up in half. So the second half will have, um, it will have the pound cakes, like marble cake and poppy seed cake. And then it will have anything that has a pound cake base dough. Also, like one of them, you make a smaller amount, of the pound cake base, and you put it in the bottom, and then you can you cook up a basic vanilla cream, and you take your poppy seed. And what you do with the poppy seed that not a lot of people do here is you put it in the coffee mill and only fill it about halfway, and then mill it, and it's like popcorn. It just goes woo, and you have this really soft inner poppy, great aroma. So that's what you do, and then you put that in your vanilla cream, and then that goes on top, and then you put crumbs on top of that, and
Wow.
it's really good. And then I have the one, it's kind of the same method with apples, and then one with plums. Like I said, the best plums you can use they come out in about August and September in the stores, and they're called sugar plums or Italian plums. I have done it with prune plums.
Hmm.
The prune plums are huge, and they can't be overripe or your whole cake gets soggy.
Yeah.
And what I've done is cut them in half and then do what I do with the sugar plums. So that worked also. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we have the breads, and I am recently have found some other flours that give me more taste, and I'm reworking some of the bread section right now. So as soon as that is done, oh, I'm going to put the Frankfurter wreath, it's called, in there too, that I have to work on still.
Mhm.
And what that is, it's you see it on the first page where you see the cakes in the cafe at the very bottom, those little ones with the almond croissant around and then the cherry on top.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
So they made little ones because they're bite sized, but normally it's like a pound cake,
Yeah.
and you slice the pound cake 2 times, and then you put a layer of either red currant jelly or raspberry jelly, and then you make a buttercream, and it has to have some layers of buttercream, and then you cover the whole cake with buttercream and with candied almonds crushed.
Uh-huh.
I have a video on how to make it. It's really easy. It's not difficult at all. And then you put it in a plastic bag and take your, rolling pin and just smash them to pieces. And then you put that on your buttercream, and then you put your cherries on top, and it's supposed to resemble the crown of one of the Kaisers from way back when.
Yeah, it does look
So
like a
it's
crown. I was looking it
yeah,
up, a picture of the big one on the internet, and it does look like one.
yeah. So yeah, so let's see, and so I have that, and
And
trying to think what.
the bread chapter, anything else other than those chapters in this volume 2?
Yeah, do you have the list?
No, I don't. I just remember
Uh,
seeing that it was going to have another volume. And I think
oh,
it's
the
kind of
quick
funny.
breads. It
Oh,
has the
that's what it
quick
is. Yeah,
breads.
quick bread. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are, influenced by my living in America. And I loved that you could make quick breads with vegetables, like zucchini and with fruit, with a banana. And I love the banana bread. Of course, I played around with it because it's easy to make those dry. So I kept tinkering with it to make sure that it comes out moist. Carrot bread, carrot cake. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things in there. So,
Yeah, wonderful.
yeah.
Well, that's say asking someone about their second book after they just published their first one is kind of like asking a woman if she's going to have another baby after she has her first one, because it's like, give me a couple years, right? Maybe I'll have
Yeah.
another one. But I think
I
that
think it's gonna be next year.
yeah,
I think.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a beautiful book, and I look forward to baking from it. Um, I don't bake all the time, but I do like to bake. I love to bake cookies. I love to make a cake for someone's birthday. The short crust has me fascinated. I did watch your video on how to do that. And it is kind of neat that it has the egg in it, which is what makes it different than like a short pie crust like we might make for an apple pie. I imagine it has a little bit of a richer taste, like you said, more. The texture of it is different. So I look forward to trying all of these things from your book, German Heritage Baking. So as we're wrapping up, Heidrun, one thing I like to ask people is if there is a book that you might recommend that has inspired you, that you might like to share.
Yeah. So I have a couple of German books, and unfortunately, they are going to be in German. But one of the books that I really enjoyed reading up on was a textbook for bakers and conditors, which is a confectionery. So when you go in the baking trade, you first learn the basics and then you branch out, and either you stay with the baking, the regular baking, which would be breads and danishes, and maybe a Linzer torte would be in there or a Black Forest cake, but generally all the cakes and the delicate things is made by the confectioner. So when you go in Germany and it says Konditorei, that means that's what that is, a confectioner. So you won't find breads there, but you find all the delicate cakes there and torts and tarts and everything. And this book gives you all the basics. What goes in a basic Black Forest cake, for example, the percentages of the chocolate, the percentages of the cacao, and eggs and butter. It shows some pictures on the bread, which were really helpful, about if you don't let it rise enough, it looks like this. If you rise it too much, it looks like this. Now, our breads in Germany are much more, they're more dense because we use them for sandwiches. So a lot of the breads that I have in there will be more like the German breads. And then I have some other ones that will have more crumb in it, more open crumb, more holes. And the last one is a all sourdough bread, which I love, and I'm having a couple of mixtures. There will be some breads that I'm trying to get it so you can buy the flour at the grocery store, and then the better ones, the better tasting ones, are when I recommend other flours that you have to buy online or somewhere. But if you want to have the really authentic taste, you're gonna have to experiment with some flours. But it's gonna be really nice. I'm trying to cover everyone with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully people will get a lot of information out of my books and positive baking experiences. And I really want to pass it on. That's kind of my, you know, that's what I set out to do.
That's
I
right.
want
That's right.
people to be able to bake and have fun with it and have positive experiences.
Right. Because I don't think you could ever bake, share, or eat a slice of cake or a cookie and not it is a positive experience. It's a happy time. And I think that people are going to get that from your book. And also the way that you bring the authentic German traditions forward and your desire to share them makes this a wonderful book about German baking. And look forward to connecting with you again when Volume 2 is ready as well.
Well, thank you, Maggie.
Yes. So why don't you tell everybody how they can connect with you online?
Yeah, so the main site is my name, heidrunmetzler.com, and it's Heidrun and Metzler, Metzler. And from there, you can find resources. You can click on the videos there. They bring you to my Vimeo channel where all my showcases live. And the showcases are divided by chapters. So if you want information on the cookie chapter, you click on the cookie showcase and there will be videos to learn from. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Pinterest, and I just opened a Facebook page, even though I decided, okay, maybe I should go back on Facebook. I haven't done anything yet with it, but by tomorrow I should have some pictures up and things. But so yeah, and I'm on YouTube. There's a few on YouTube. Most of my videos will be on Vimeo because it's a professional channel and it's better quality and less ads.
Yeah.
So
great. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. You have wrapped up our 5th year of the Cookbook Love podcast here beautifully with sharing something that you're passionate about. And it's a beautiful time of year for baking. So I can't thank you enough for all the work that you put into your book and your persistence and dedication to bringing it forth. Because as we know, it's a lot of work to put a book like this together, especially a baking book where there's a lot of, you got to get things right, ingredients correct, and you get a good result. But again, that is German Heritage Baking, Time-Honored Recipes, Traditional Techniques, and Culinary Secrets by Heidrun Metzler.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Okay.
It was so much fun talking with you.
Yes, and I hope you have a wonderful 2025.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.